There you are,
Oh,
my friend.
hello. Hi.
Loud and clear. And before we start, Jonathan, so tell us more about the immersive learning research network that you manage and build up from the ground. I think that's very interesting from our audience as well. And yeah, we're very keen to hear, some of the scientific elements and underlying factors for immersive learning and what you can share with our audience today. So go ahead.
Thank you, Dimitri, very much, and appreciate the warm welcome. My name is Jonathan Richter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Board of the Immersive Learning Research Network, or ILEARN, ILRN. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's globally situated to basically find, showcase, and innovate on what works in immersive learning. We arose out of the American Education Research Association back in 2007 with a special interest group dedicated to immersive learning in virtual environments. And we felt it was a successful special interest group, but we were education researchers only, and we wanted to speak with the psychologists and the various areas of application and the video game designers who were involved in this. So we stepped outside of AERA to form this international interdisciplinary group. And so in 2014, we started. So Dimitri, do you have the presentation there going? Yeah, thanks. So
Just give a sign, I'll move it forwards and backwards for you, John.
awesome.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So we're open design and open science. We're trying to share the what works in immersive learning to the public. There are, of course, as you know, big corporations, Microsoft and Apple and Google and others who are creating the large ecosystems and platforms. We're trying to be kind of level the playing field and help the consumer and the areas of application to understand what is the best way to implement these kinds of tools for their learners, whoever they might be. So we provide tools and support in the creation and the vetting of these high quality immersive learning experiences. For the first 5 years, we focused almost strictly on high quality research. So it was kind of trying to merge the two disciplines of
Mhm.
computer science and education technology. And while one would think that those two fairly related disciplines would talk to each other and work together, just like lots of other disciplines where the language is specific and you're really trying to understand what's going on within a particular realm, it ended up that they didn't. So we worked really hard to build the bridge between those, and we've done pretty well. So we've gone beyond that to engage game designers as far as the UX and showcasing what works in immersive learning. So
Mhm.
what we have now, some years later, is what we call this immersive learning research ecosystem. So on the knowledge tree needed to be sort of developed, putting a moat around the
Mhm.
research community so that they could feel safe to be able to talk about the science of immersive learning. And science is different than other industries in the sense that they require a very specific method or set of methods for ascertaining the truth. So when you're talking about from a scientific perspective, you need a method, or at least within the confines of one discussion, you're going to say we're going to agree on this is the method for for determining the truth, and then you gather some sort of data, and then you make inferences or conclusions after analyzing that data according to the method. And scientists need that assurance that the conversation and the dialogue is going to be constrained around those kinds of discussions. So we
Mm.
created this knowledge tree, and created certain boundaries around that original discussion. But we felt the need also, because this industry, this area of XR and immersive learning is changing so quickly, and there's so many new innovations coming out, there's no research done on them. So uh, we decided to add the futurists, those who are looking at the emerging edge of the future, the new technologies, the things that are allowing new ways of immersing, whether it's haptic technologies or augmented reality or mixed reality. All of these new kinds of technologies, there's no research done on it. And the thing is research takes time. It takes time to get some funding, get get some get your team together, go out and find, gather the data, analyze the data, write it up, and get it published into a journal.
Yeah.
That lead time is about 2 years.
Yeah.
That's about the quickest that you can possibly do that. And so iLearn kind of exists between this emerging learning futures focus, which we've got a team of. The first immersive learning research report that we did had 100 different experts from around the world working together in a Delphi survey, and you can get our state of XR and immersive learning report on our website, and we're continuously doing that. So we're now doing our second round. Um, the innovation are the people who are designing and working and teaching and learning with this technology on a day-to-day basis. They want to work it. How do I take XR and make it work with my students, or with a game jam, or create something new? And they take a combination of the research or the evidence base of what works with immersive learning and the newest cutting edge, looking at the possibility space provided by the futures aspect. The fourth is this transfer of trying to work on making things land where they could. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
next slide, please. So the idea is, what is the scientific basis of immersive learning? And the idea of immersive learning actually goes back a long, long ways, to the cave paintings on the wall of Lascaux in France. Um, but virtual reality has been around a long time. But from the current scientific perspective, the idea of immersion kind of goes back to the phenomenological idea of what is immersion. So
Mm-hmm.
immersion is something that happens to a person and they experience it. So it's a phenomenon. If you are immersed, it can happen from a number of different ways. And designers, developers, and indeed, even practitioners of immersive learning oftentimes tend to focus on one or maybe two rather than multiple. So the first one is stimulus based, right? So you can surround yourself with virtual, digital bits where you perceive that you are in a particular environment. And that is what a lot of the technology focuses on, is you're in virtual reality. It feels like you're in a place. And we tend to focus on your sense of touch, your sound, your ears, maybe even your taste, etc. And so that's stimulus-based immersion. But immersion also comes from psychological. You could get immersed in a book, or you can be immersed in a conversation. And so immersion is definitely something that happens in the brain, and it has something to do with time on task, and it has something to do with engagement with whatever it is that you are confronting. And so psychological engagement, making things fun, making things make sense, drawing people in from their various motivations is really is an important aspect of immersion. Narrative immersion, being part of a story, right? So what's going to happen next, right? So Hollywood is excellent at providing narrative immersion, and narrative immersion can be implemented into these immersive learning experiences in incredible ways. And then finally, just a big one to point out is social immersion. Um, Social immersion happens when you're in a crowd, in a group, and you're feeling that that connectedness to that group, and it can happen in a variety of ways as well. So immersion, it happens from a variety of different ways. One key for immersive designers is to not just focus on one, but to try to authentically integrate a variety of different immersive perspectives, because different people have different preferences and are motivationally created differently.
And
Um,
John, is there also a hierarchy, I mean, of, or let's say, I mean,
y-
levels of immersion, or I mean, and I mean,
Certainly,
what you use as a reference as well? I mean,
yeah.
stimulus.
I
Yeah,
mean, the Immersive Learning Research Network, we focus solely on digital.
yeah,
So there are we could talk about immersing yourself in books, but I do think that there's most likely a hierarchy of immersion,
mm,
um, given some of these factors, you know.
yeah,
But but yeah, I think it really depends on the person, and it depends on the task. Um,
mm-hmm.
so
Interesting. Yeah,
possibly not quite as straightforward as saying this is the first
yeah,
thing that you have to have, because like I said, doing some summer reading this is always a great thing, and time and space disappear.
yeah,
Csikszentmihalyi, who's a researcher out of Chicago, he talks about flow,
yeah,
when a person's perception of time
yeah,
and self disappears, and they become one with
yeah,
the object of study. That's a real form of immersion that I think is
yeah.
well sought after.
When he wrote the book and the research, I mean, you already can have that kind of flow of immersion when you read something or you work. I mean, that can happen, you know. Yeah. So by the way, John, one moment. So we're getting questions on the chat panel. So I would encourage everyone
Sure.
to share the questions, because I forgot to mention that at the start. I mean, at the end of every 50-minute presentation, there is room for one or two questions, and we'll select some of the best ones for our speakers. So go ahead. Good.
Yes, yes. Um, so for immersive learning from the Immersive Learning Research Network, we came up with three fundamental components of immersive learning, and we called that our trivium,
Mm,
harkening back to the medieval scholar perspective. One is the input, that's computer science. So you have the hardware and the software. How is the hardware and the software providing the stimulus to help augment or create that immersive experience? The second aspect of immersive learning is the game studies or the interface design. You're learning something, and oftentimes learning things are complex or really challenging, and sometimes not that exciting. So how do game studies have evolved over the years to engage people to spend, upwards of around 300 hours on one game? And so
wow.
how do they use those motivational hooks to keep people focused, to level up towards their particular goal, and those achievement focused activities in game studies leading to UX or interface design um, are incredibly essential to what we're trying to do for immersive learning. And then of course, you can put the hardware and software together and have really engaging interface, but how do you know that people are learning?
Yeah.
And that's where the learning sciences comes in. That's the pedagogy for how people are learning. It's the assessment features for how do we know that they're learning. It's the psychology of a particular discipline or a particular application. And so all three of these need to be lined up really well in order for you to have a high quality immersive learning experience. Next slide. So the idea of immersive learning and the question of how long will it take to go mainstream, it's a challenging one. I put 0 to 5
Mhm.
years.
Right.
uh, I would say 0 because it's already here.
Hmm. Yeah.
William Gibson, the famous science fiction author, said, you know, the future is already here. It's just not widely distributed yet.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I would say 5 years or even more
Mhm.
because we have a real jumble of technologies that we're trying to create interoperability. We're trying to be able to move from one to the other. Lots of these learning situations need some incredible instructional design around them. And like I pointed out on the previous slide, getting computer science expertise connected to and talking with game design
Yeah.
expertise and connected to and working with those learning science expertise in an applied area
Yeah.
um, it is a real challenge. So it requires connected, groups of experts to work together um, to do it well. So
Mhm.
underneath here on the bullets these are all of the different immersive learning research networks houses of application.
Mhm.
So you can see the workforce development and industry training is a house of application.
Yeah.
Um, language, culture, and heritage, medical and healthcare education. Some of these are already pretty well off and going, like medical and healthcare education. Um, there's so many different applications already for immersive learning,
Mhm.
whereas some of the others are not quite there yet.
Mhm.
But
What are
we
the
see,
most
go ahead.
recent ones who join? What kind of, let's say, industry or domains? I mean, are just exploring, or in, let's say, in their initial exploration phase, or
Hmm. Yeah, you definitely nature and environmental sciences, I
yeah,
think, has a number of. I think there's just a disconnect for people to use technology to study nature.
yeah.
Although there's definitely there. Lehigh University does some amazing things on watersheds. I mean, these are all houses that
Yeah.
have enough research and immersive learning experience applications so that the houses run. So um,
Mhm.
they're fortified. Key trends that we see through our State of XR and Immersive Learning report, which our executive summary is due out within the month for our second round. These are not from there, but these are just top of my head.
Mhm.
That the immersive learning supply chain is going to be more developed. We've had this promise of VR and XR for a long time, and people have been working behind the scenes. Uh, Facebook, now Meta, took advantage of that developed learning supply chain. Um, it was already there, but to see that become more developed with designers, instructional developers, and companies to sell it. I think that that supply chain is going to become more and more visible, and you're going to even see some ecosystems. Hopefully, iLearn, the Immersive Learning Research Network, will be one of those. So
Mhm.
you're also getting an increasing number and kinds of use cases
Yeah.
for our eighth annual iLearn conference, which we just held in Vienna. We had 132 peer-reviewed research articles or research cases. So we're growing every single year, and you're just seeing a lot more of that all the time.
Right.
You're also
And
seeing.
John, can you give an example? I mean, sorry to interrupt, but we also have to move towards slowly towards our next present. But there's one
Right.
question also about research examples. I mean, can you share some kinds of examples in the workforce training and development domain?
Yeah, well, that third point there, that the
Yeah,
introductory, sort of like welcome to the company, and
yeah,
here's the production line, or here's the basics of what you
yeah,
are doing in your job, or this new position that you're taking. You can really cut through that top level of cognitive understanding and situate people within the workforce culture in a lot of ways. And you're seeing a lot of examples from a variety of workforce experiences that like that, um, in addition to the computer science.
right.
Um, so
So what's next?
what's next? I think augmented reality is going to, virtual reality right now has center stage, but I think augmented reality is going to be a major player, probably larger than virtual reality. You're going to see Meta or Facebook, waves and waves of that. We know that they've got a number of headsets that they're introducing, but the billions of dollars that they're investing in this space, I think, is going to have some big impact. You'll see a rise of 3D instructional design that will help the workplace as well as all the other industries, and you're already starting to see that come on. The blurring and dissolving of learning versus practice. So training for something and then going to practice as separate activities, I think, is going to become
Yeah,
less and
yeah,
less, so people will do it
yeah,
on the job.
yeah.
And then this disruptive innovation is just going to keep happening.
Mhm.
So the future becomes a little harder to predict. We're going to have shorter and shorter times for forecasting. And then finally, just the pitch for those connected learning ecosystems like iLearn and like IEEE with their standardizations. I think these types of groups are going to increasingly come together to serve the public. So.